Welcome to our Amazon Market Insights webinar. We are running these webinars on a monthly basis, and this month we are looking into the category pots and pans on Amazon DE. But before we start, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Ines Narch. I'm Principal Consulting at Metoda, meaning I'm responsible for the consulting business of Metoda. I'm with Metoda since, they're stated 6.5 years, but next month it's going to be 7 years already. So already some time. Before I joined Metoda, I was with Amazon here in Munich as a senior vendor manager. And here at Metoda, I'm supporting our customers in generating the right insights and recommendations and actions out of this vast majority of data you can get from Amazon, but also from e-commerce in general. As I said, we're running these webinars on a monthly basis. It's always the same agenda. We first look into the market, so how big is the market, what are the main brands in the market. Then we are looking into how consumers search and buy on Amazon. And finally, we are looking into the visibility, organic and paid, for like most important search terms of the category we are looking into in the share of voice analysis. But let's just start directly with the market. So what do we look at here? We always start with the main category development. In this case, it's the category kitchen. We're looking at this for a couple of years now already. Then we are going to do a deep dive into like orders, revenue, average prices for the categories we are looking at, like in this webinar, pots and pans, into like price segments, and as I already said, into like the main brands within these categories. So let's start with the main category development. What you see here is the development of sales in the main category kitchen on Amazon Germany since 2019. And of course, I'm really happy that we have that data back since 2019, because that was the last year without any COVID-19 effects we have on the table. So it's very good to compare the development of this and the previous years of the pandemic with a year before the pandemic. So 2019 is the gray line you see at the bottom. It's pretty stable from a development. We have small peaks around Easter, small peaks around Prime Day, and of course, like Q4 with Cyber Week, with like high sales, because like many consumers are shopping on Amazon, and Christmas deals and Christmas standing in front to buy presents and everything. So Q4 always shows like a higher demand. But in total, 2019 was quite stable, except of this Q4 peak. That's pretty normal. If we look at 2020, you see it's slightly starting above 2019. That's normal growth on Amazon. But with the first lockdown, with the first measurements taking place against COVID-19, we see that the growth, the year-over-year growth, is slightly increasing compared to the beginning of the year. And it's really going up high in Q4, with having a 65% year-over-year growth, 2020 compared to 2019. And as I said, like especially 2020 is very much driven by COVID-19. Especially during lockdowns, shops were closed, people stayed at home for home office, so they were not going out for lunch, they were rather cooking at home. They were also during the summertime not traveling, not going to vacation, but spending that money for their surroundings, for their homes. And that is something that you can clearly see here in the category kitchen. If we look at 2021, last year, you see that the year-over-year growth at the beginning of the year was very, very high, because yes, we were in the middle of Corona, what was not the case beginning of 2020. So you see really that the demand, the online demand, the shift from offline to online shopping is really reflected in these figures here. But what we also see is that the demand was declining and reaching about in the middle of the year last year, the same level as the previous year. And it stayed like this pretty much. And if we look at Q4, you even see that the Q4 last year was well below Q4 in the previous year. So we really see like 12% below Q4 figures of 2020. If we now look at the current year, the orange line, you see if we do a year-over-year comparison, we are already below last year's volumes. And it's slightly going down beginning of this year, and it's continuing now to in June the same way. So we are currently about since May, and now in June, we are at the same level volumes as the 2 years before. And if we just compare the first half year this year with previous year, we are actually 13% below year over year. This is not surprisingly because we are, of course, missing many of the COVID-19 effects that we've seen in the previous year. But what we also see and what is really impacting the sales now are these macroeconomic effects that already started last year. There's like supply chain issues. We have a shortage in logistics capacities. We are seeing increasing raw material prices. We are seeing like a growing inflation, which actually makes people keep their money together instead of like spending it. So I'm currently expecting that we are staying pretty much at the level of the previous 2 years now during the summertime. And how Q4 will look like really depends on how these macroeconomic effects will be solved or not. But now let's continue with the categories we are actually looking at. As I said, we're looking at pots and pans on Amazon Germany, and you're seeing it's really a lot of categories we're looking at. It's 23 categories. We were grouping them together to make it a little bit better digestible. But first, let's start with the overall figures. And what we see here on the left-hand side are the orders, on the right-hand side the revenue, split up into the 2 quarters we are looking at, Q4 last year, Q1 this year. And in total, we see that about 1.6 million orders were placed for products in these 23 categories, generating an overall gross revenue of 97 million euro. You see Q4 is for orders and for revenue about 1/3 larger than Q1, which is again expectable because we've seen already that in the main category figures, Q4 is always much stronger because people are buying presents, and of course pots and pans also last year, after not having like large Christmas parties the previous year, last year after was like the chance to invite people to your homes, to cook up dinner for them, to have like real Christmas parties. So people are buying stuff to serve their friends and families. So this is an expectable development comparing these 2 quarters. And what we also see is that the average price of the product is actually dropping from Q4 to Q1. And why that is the case, we will see on the next slide. And here on the next slide, there is a question coming in. Just a second, I will directly answer that because that makes sense now to answer. The development of the main kitchen category, is the trend aggregated across all Amazon marketplaces or just Amazon Germany? It is just Amazon Germany we are looking at because it fits better to the categories we are looking at, because pots and pans on Amazon.de. So the main category development is also for Amazon.de only. Okay, and now let's continue with this slide. We've seen comparison Q4, Q1. What we also did is that we were looking into the different categories a little bit more in detail. So as I said, we are looking at 23 categories, which is a lot. So we were grouping them a little bit together, but we were trying to show you like the most important categories here on that slide individually. And what you can see is that the category 1, which is like frying pans, is the one generating the most orders and the most revenue in that half year we were looking at an average price of 57 euro, which is pretty close to the average price for the whole category. We've seen it slightly below. But what we also see is then we have like the roasting pans, the pan sets, which are pretty much at the same volume level, and the braising pans. So you see it's like really frying pans standing out from a market share. The others are getting smaller and smaller. But if we look at the revenue, you see that the pot sets actually make it from 6th place to 2nd place. And this is simply driven because, of course, a pot set that contains several units, not only like one pan or one pot, has a higher average price. And that's why they are gaining share if you look at the revenue. What we've also seen is that the braising pans, the category 4, and the pot and pan sets, the category 7, actually show like a significantly higher demand in Q4 compared to Q1. And if you look at the braising pans, that's category 4, with an average price of 86 euro, and the pot and pan sets with an average price of 113 euro. This is mainly driving the decline in average price if you compare Q1 to Q4. And talking about prices, let's look into the different price segments in that categories. We were splitting up the prices into like 20 euro segments because that makes sense from our point of view in that categories. And what you can see here is pretty much a really clear split. Everything above 100 euro is mainly sets. So it's pot sets, it's pot and pan sets, because as we've seen on the slide before, as soon as you have like several products together in a set, the average price is higher because you get more products for that price. And that's why like above 100 euro, nearly everything is sets. Except braising pans, they actually dominate also the price segment above 200 euro. They are like, yeah, I can name it. It's Le Creuset and it's Staub that also offer like very high priced premium products in that segment. In the price segments 20 to 80 euro, the main category represented here is really frying pans. And like in the lower part, 20 to 40 euro, it's roasting pans. So the pans are more below 100 euro. Also, like the pan sets are most of the time below 100 euro because it's usually like just like two or three pans together. So it's more like below 100 euro, and in the lowest price segment, up to 20 euro, it's very special individual pots, pans, sauce pots. So it's like we said it here, an omelette pan, for instance. That it's like very specialized one-piece units. The main volumes are really in that price range, 20 to 60 euro. But who is actually selling and owning the largest share of the market? And that's what we are looking at here. As you can see, the other share as for orders as well for revenue is quite high. So like the top 5 brands we are always looking at, they only own like 57% of the market, depending if you look at orders or if you look at revenue, which is quite small, especially if you look a little bit more in detail. You actually see that there are 2 main brands that are Tefal and WMF. And these two brands own 40% of the market. And the rest already, like even the next top three brands, own like really small portions of the market. And it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So what we see here in looking at the different brands is really, as I said, we have many different categories. We were looking at 23 different categories with many different brands. So it's really like most brands only own like a very small portion of the market. There are only like these two main brands, Tefal and WMF on Amazon Germany, that own a significant share of the market. And as you can see here, like Le Creuset, I already talked about, they made it into the top 5 for revenue. They were not showing up in the orders, which is not surprisingly. With that average price, it's usually hard to show up volume-wise in the top 5. And Fissler, that is also like the top 5th in orders, is showing up in revenue too. These two are like brands, these are like premium brands that usually have like a very high average price. Of course, for Fissler, it's also because they are selling many sets, like pot or pan sets, especially pot sets, that have, again, a higher average price. So if there are no further questions on the market, if you have questions, just post them. We just wrap it up here. What have we seen? The category pots and pans generated 1.6 million orders and like 97 million euro gross revenue. Gross is important. It's not net, it's gross, it's including taxes. On Amazon in that half year we were looking at, demand is higher in Q4 than in Q1, which is expectable for the Christmas season. Main volumes, as we have seen, are actually generated by the category frying pans. But if we just compare pots and pans, we also see that all pots generate about 60% of the volumes and about 50% of the revenue. So all pans, the pots then own about 40% of the orders and also like about 50% of the revenue. So what we actually can see here is that pots sell better or more often or in a higher volume on Amazon Germany than pots. Like pens sell more than pots. I'm not sure what I said initially. But pots seem to have like a higher average price, especially if we think about like pot sets that are selling quite well. So the revenue is split up quite equally between these two product categories. Nearly 80% of the volumes are generated for products up to 80 euro. And we also have seen that the demand shifts slightly from the product types bought from Q4 to Q1. And that is actually driving the price decline in Q1 compared to Q4. What we have also seen is that the top brands own 50% of the volumes, but it's actually two brands, Tefal and WMF, that own the largest portion of the volumes, while the rest of the market is really split up into many different brands owning smaller market shares. And as we have seen, yeah, Tefal strongest brand, followed by WMF. And of course, also like Tefal is very strong in the pan categories, while WMF is stronger in the pot categories. So the split pots and pans can also be seen in the main brands that own like the largest portion of the market here. So then let's continue with customer journey. So how consumers search on Amazon. What we always see when we look into the search terms and the search behavior on Amazon is that usually like search terms are usually contain 2 to 3 words on average in Germany. And they usually contain an interest, so either a product type or a theme or an attribute. They might contain a brand or a product name that's unique to one brand. And they also might contain an occasion, like a birthday, a search for Christmas presents or something. I can tell you, like the third topic, the occasions, is not so much of relevance in the categories we are looking at. But of course, interests and brands, they are relevant to understand how consumers search on Amazon. And there are also other factors like new trends coming up, or also like, of course, Amazon events. We just have one in front of us, Amazon Prime Day, that also influences the way consumers search on Amazon, but also external factors. And we brought you one example in that category for what external factors can influence the search behavior on Amazon. But let's start with branded versus generic search traffic. Then we are looking into the top interest in brands. And then finally, we are looking into where do actually the conversions of the top brands that we will see here are coming from. I think that's always very interesting to understand. That first, branded versus generic search traffic. What means branded? Branded means we assign a search term as a branded search term if it contains a brand name or a product name that can be assigned unique or to one brand. So if a product name is similar for, or is the same for different brands, then for us it's not branded, but usually it's pretty easy to identify these. What we see here, and that's also very common on Amazon, is really that the major portion of the search traffic is generic. So consumers do not enter a brand name. It's about 1/3 of the search traffic that contains a brand name, while the rest is generic, does not include any reference to a brand or product. That is, as I said, quite common. There are some categories on Amazon that might stand out here, like I always name video games, because there we actually have like more than 80% branded traffic, because it's always related to a product of a brand, like the gaming consoles. So most of the time it's really branded, but usually like 25 to 35% branded traffic is pretty average on Amazon. What we also see, and that is of course something like a seasonal effect or Amazon event effect, is that in Q4 the branded share is higher compared to Q1. That is simply the case because Q4 includes Cyber Week and includes Christmas deals and of course Christmas. So especially during a deal event on Amazon, consumers tend to have search or increase their searches for brands because they are actually looking for a bargain from a well-known brand, which they might not want to buy for the regular price. But of course, it's also if consumers search for a present, they usually search more specific and might include a brand than just rather looking for a pen. They might look for a pen from a certain brand to give it someone as a present. So this is a behavior that we see also in a lot of different other categories. And this is also a behavior that we see, for instance, on Prime Day. But just looking at what do customers actually search, not only like generic or branded. On the left-hand side, you see the interests customers are searching for. And you see that pens, like Pfanne, is the word that is contain or that is having the highest search traffic share. But actually with 12%, it is not very high. We did, I think that was before Christmas, a webinar on drinking bottles. And drinking bottle as a term actually owns like more than 40% of the total search traffic in that category. So you see like pen with 12% is not tremendously high. Yes, it owns the largest search traffic share if we compare it with other words. But what we also see here is actually that the search behavior is quite fragmented. So consumers search for product types. So they really search for pen or a pot set or like a wok. So they really search very product type oriented, and they do not include many attributes. And that is something like the only example we find here in the top 10 is Induktion. So they do not really specify a lot, like for instance, the diameter of a pan or the volume of a pot. They really search very general on Amazon in these categories. If we look, oh yeah, one thing that's also remarkable, we compared pots and pans also from the search traffic, and we've seen that pans have about 25% higher search traffic than pots. But we also have seen in the previous section that pans actually own 50% higher volume than pots. So what you could, yeah, what you might extract out of these is actually that on average pens might have a higher conversion rate than pots, because the search traffic is not fitting actually the volume that's much higher for pens compared to pets. Pens compared to pots. Sorry, I'm really having a hard time with pens and pots. If we look at the brand strength, and the brand strength is actually the share of a brand within all the branded search traffic, we see that VMF is clearly leading this game. So they have the highest share of branded search traffic with 36%, followed by Tefal, which is not even managing to get half of it. One thing that's interesting here too is that out of the 6 brands we've seen in the top brands in the market share, 4 are actually showing up in the top 10 of brand strength. So this really means that a well-known and well-established brand, of course, supports your sales on Amazon because consumers are actively searching for your products, for your brand. One thing that's also interesting is that the top 10 brands own like 78% of the branded search traffic, which is quite high. So there's not much search traffic left for other brands. But also if you compare to the 36% that these interests get out of the complete search traffic, the top 10, also shows again that it is very fragmented. Like searches are fragmented, market is fragmented, products are very broad, cover very broad range, and that is what you can see here too. And I told you we are going to bring you an example for an external factor, and this is DeVoc here. You might know DeVoc, I'm not sure. They were presenting their product, which is actually like a very small wok with a separate. It's heated with like fuel paste, like you can use it for a fondue. They presented their product in the Höhle der Löwen end of October last year, and in that month they actually managed to get 27% brand strength. So in like 6 remaining days, they were like pretty much outstanding in that category. But the brand strength, so the branded search traffic for that brand declined very fast again and is now at a very low level. Or was it at least in that period of time we were looking at, which also means their sales had a high peak in October and is now on a very low level. But you can really see this is, I think, always a nice example to show you if you have like consumers, if you get awareness for your brand for consumers on other channels like TV or something, it will also influence their search behavior on Amazon. And this is something you should be prepared for, especially when we talk about advertising. And let's then look at the conversion traffic sources of the top brands. I told you, I think that's always very interesting. You might recall, if we look at Q1 and Q4 together, 68% of the traffic was generic. And we see that 67% of the conversions are from generic search traffic and 32% from branded, and a very, very small portion of the conversions is actually from competitor-based searches. Competitor-based searches means someone is looking for Tefal pan and then buys the VMF pan. So that's pretty much it. And what we see here is that like Tefal and VMF, also Amazon Basics, Silit, Stoneline, they have like quite a high share, partially much higher than the average of generic conversions, because it's really like, yeah, they show up on the top rankings if someone is looking for a pan or a pot, while all these premium brands like Staub, Le Creuset, but also Fissler, they mainly get their conversions out of branded searches. And especially with this premium high price brands, that's very easy to explain, because if someone is searching for a pan, they are usually not planning to spend €100 or more on a product. So it means consumers searching very generic will usually, the chance that one of the products of these premium brands converts is very low. So these brands will never show up in the search results very high on the first page, because for Amazon it's important to show consumers products that are clicked and do convert, and they will usually not on generic terms. So that's the reason why they mainly convert on branded search traffic, because otherwise they are more or less not visible to the consumer. Stone line is one example. We will also look at it in the next chapter and see that in the top 5 too. They have like quite a high generic search share and like quite a high branded search traffic, but they also get like with 9% conversions from competitors. That's much, much higher than the average of 1%. And we looked into that a little bit more in detail and have seen that this is mainly coming from one brand, which is Molex. I personally did not know that brand before. And Stoneline is showing up with paid advertising on if a consumer is searching for that brand. So they really get conversions from that brand, because it also seems that Molex is not selling pans or pots on Amazon. So they get all this traffic from Molex. So if there are further questions, or if there are not, we will finalize the customer journey. We have seen like 68% of the traffic is generic, resulting in 67% of conversions are generic overall. Funnel is the most searched term, followed by top set, but still it's really like, it's not really outstanding. It's more a lower share these individual interests get. And we have seen that search traffic for pans is 25% higher than for pots, which is deviating a lot from comparing volumes for pans and pots. The most searched brand is VMF, followed by Tefal. We recall, if we look at the market, Tefal has the highest market share, then VMF is following, and that although VMF has a much higher branded share than Tefal, but Tefal has the highest volumes and revenue, simply is based on the fact that Tefal gains a higher share of conversions from generic searches. It might also be a reason because of like the deviation in sales prices, but it's really driven, Tefal gets more generic based conversions than VMF. And DeVoc was an example for brand strength that we looked at. It actually simply shows you that if you have external awareness, brand awareness activities, make sure that you cover that on Amazon, because it will influence the search behavior of consumers on Amazon. Then let's continue with share of voice. Why is visibility important? I think you all know that. Consumers usually search by search term. They are not browsing through Amazon. More and more of these placements on the first search result page, which is the one consumers shop from, they usually don't click on the second or third, is really like transformed from organic placements into paid placements. The more competitive a category is, the more this is true. And kitchen is a very competitive category, and we've seen pots and pans especially too. So we are seeing like many different or many paid placements on the first search result page compared to other categories. So what are we looking at here in the visibility is really we're looking at the top search terms as terms, search terms really, the top brands, organic and paid, and then we brought, as always, a small example. If we look at the top search terms, we show you like usually the top 10 here. This time it's some more, it's top 20. But as you can see, like VMF is the search term with the highest traffic share in these categories. Being like really in that period of time, the search term used most by consumers. And then we see Tefal in combination with pen, and we see Tefal is especially strong in pens on the 9th place. The rest are more generic search terms. And yeah, okay, lightning deals, that's simply driven because of the Cyber Week that's included in that data. But you see that we have many different search terms with like really small search share. And if we take the top 20 for our visibility analysis, we still just cover 27% of the traffic. There are other categories where we can cover more than 50% of the total search traffic, but this category is very fragmented. So we took the top 20 to look at which brands are showing up organically and which brands are showing up paid on the first search result page. What you can see, other is at the top, and it's on for the organic one, it's above 40%. For the paid, it's above 50%, nearly 60%, which also shows you it's really fragmented. Even for organic search, there are many different brands showing up here. But the top ones are VMF and Tefal, and this is, of course, most probably no surprise to you. And we see from the top 6 brands, we see like 2, 4, 5 showing up in the organic, top 10 organic. This is simply because, of course, your organic listings are mainly driven by your current and historic sales. So if you're selling very well on the search terms, Amazon will show your products as long as they are available. So that really makes sense. If we look at the paid visibility share, that looks a little bit different. So we only see like 3 brands. It's Tefal, VMF, and Stoneline. And Stoneline is actually driving a lot of their sales by paid visibility, and they seem to be very successful with that. But as what we also see is Tefal and VMF are very close together. And then we see many brands that at least I, most of the time, have never heard about. So this is also, again, showing like very broad product range, very broad brand base, very high competition in advertising. So there's actually no brand that is standing out here in paid visibility. Okay, then let's go to the example. So what we look at here is Tefal and VMF and the top 5 keywords. Because we wanted to deep dive a little bit into these 2 brands and the visibility. So what we see here is that funnel as the search term with the highest search traffic. Tefal has a share of voice of 14% in paid visibility, while Stoneline actually owns like 17% of the paid visibility here. If we look at top set, Tefal only shows 6%, has visibility of 6%, VMF 16, and there's another brand, DMS, also reaching like the same volume as VMF, or the same share as VMF. And if we continue to look here, we really see that the paid visibility of Tefal is especially strong in pen categories, while VMF is much stronger in pod categories. And this is something we've seen also in the market. Tefal as a market leader, strong in pens, VMF second, but leading the pod categories. And this is also something we see in advertising. I'm not sure If it's because Tefal focuses their advertising more on pans and WMF more on pots, or if it's just because they have a higher relevance, so they are getting the better placements, and of course also like the same placement for lower CPC within their category. But this is clearly reflecting everything we've seen in the last 3 chapters. So let's wrap up the share of voice. As we have seen, customers mainly search very general by using like product type related search terms, not so much branded. And what we also see is in the organic visibility, we see pretty much only like well-known brands. Because this is driven by current and historic sales, while what we've seen in the paid visibility is actually that we have very high competition here. There are many different brands showing up on the first page of the search results in paid placements. There's not really one brand standing out here, which of course means there is a potential for one brand to like really increase their visibility. But of course, you would need to invest very high because of the fierce competition. The cost per click are pretty high. So it's definitely a trade-off between investment and visibility. And what I just said, if we compare the paid visibility of Tefal and WMF, that was just on the last slide, we really see that Tefal is very strong in pans, WMF is very strong in pots, and that is really like you can see that in all the different topics we were looking at. Okay, are there any questions? Yes, there is one question, but actually I have to say I don't really understand it. So I need to, so how do you calculate the percentage share of clicks on the first 3 products? I got a different number last week on an e-commerce conference, which is much lower. I'm not entirely sure what is meant with that. But of course, what is very important to understand, if we do search term analysis based on the Amazon search terms, we are using an internal algorithm to weight the search terms with the traffic or with a traffic index behind. Because I'm not sure if that was done in that case too, because you only get a ranking from Amazon on the search terms, but no traffic behind. So what we do is that we estimate the traffic based on the ranking, and also, of course, actually also based on which country is it, which day is it, which month is it. So we actually have like seasonal variations in the traffic, and this might influence the difference. But I'm not sure if that was actually the question. So if you can comment on my answer, please do so. So if there are no further questions, let's summarize that up and try to finish at least in time. So we've seen in category pots and pans 1.6 million orders in this half year, Q4 21 and Q1 22, generating 97 million euro gross revenue, with like nearly 80% of the volumes are up to a price of 80 euro. Pans have slightly higher volume share, so they own 60%, while pots only 40%, but the revenue is pretty much split up equally between these two categories. Customers search very generic and very general, mainly using the product type, but they are also using very fragmented terms, which is simply driven because of this like very broad product range we were looking at. The rock is a very nice example to show you what influence external brand awareness activities can have on the customer search behavior on Amazon. Tefal and WMF, they stand out really in market, in customer search, in brand strength, in organic visibility, but they actually do not really stand out in paid visibility. And that is, in my opinion, simply because we are looking at a very competitive market here in terms of advertising. So if you really want to gain like a high share of paid visibility to push your sales, you really need to invest high, and you need to make sure that you cover this large variety of search terms that are relevant for your products. If you like that presentation, or if you have further questions, you can get in touch with us. If you are interested in joining some more of our webinars, we run them monthly, as I said. Next month it's even two. We are running like the Prime Day webinar recap and the category pet food. I'm not sure if you're really in pots and pans, pet food might not be so much of interest to you. But if you don't want to miss any of our webinars, simply sign up for our newsletter. You can also go to our website and check out our historic or previous webinars. You can download the presentation there, or you can also like rewatch the video. For today, if you registered, you will get the presentation sent via email to you, so you don't need to take care about anything. And of course, please feel free to share it within your organization. If you have an idea for another topic for a webinar, just bring it to us. And if you would like to get into more details for your categories, of course, just get in touch with us. We are running these analysis also customer specific on every category, on different countries, as you wish. Then thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a great lunch break. And until next time.